You good?
Let's do it.
All right. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to a work session for the Town of Silverton Board of Trustees. It is 5:04 p.m. and this special work session is pertaining to the 8th Street, the 8th and Bluff Special Improvement District. And if I need to speak louder, tell me. Clayton's kicking it off?
Yes.
Okay.
Be hard to hear.
Just pause it. That's what we've needed this whole time.
Yeah. Except for the mud slide. Right.
All right, thank you. Yeah, I was waiting to be promoted to panelist, and so I feel I've been duly promoted and ready to go. Where would you like me to start, Mr. Mayor?
The turn. Oh, you got it.
We're just turning up the volume, Clayton. It's a little loud here. There's a lot of rain.
Oh, okay, good. That's good for you guys.
Perfect.
You hear us?
Yep, I can hear you. How's my sound? Am I not coming through, guys?
Ridiculous. Oh my God.
For those of you who aren't here yet, can zoom in. Tell them to stay home. Crazy.
I would naturally. Kind of stuck behind the mudslide. Hi there. Back from UA. Right there, it's not fourth play.
Here before.
Sure.
Get there.
Yes. Right. Fairly dry. Rain here work.
Crazy, right?
See it. Yours any better?
Yeah, I can hear you guys, but it just sounds like everybody's talking at once.
Sorry, it is a hailstorm.
The roof didn't have a leak, it will tonight.
All right, we should be good to go.
You guys got me now?
Yes, sir.
All right.
5 by 5.
All right, Mr. Mayor, how would you like me to proceed?
I think this is going to be an overview and a Q&A for those who are getting feed.
Exactly. Yeah. So, yeah, Clay, if you could just, everyone's had a chance to review your memo. I guess if you could just walk us through, the highlights of the memo and some of the key recent benchmarks.
Sure.
The goal for today is to answer any new or lingering questions about both the SID as a process in itself, questions from the trustees about town liability, and as we're moving forward, considering additional ordinances to move this project forward, just questions that the group would like to address, make sure everyone feels they have all the knowledge that they need, and that those outstanding questions are answered, so you feel comfortable making decisions about the next steps of the process.
Okay.
Thank you.
So I guess I'll begin by giving a brief background of the timeline here. I mean, I think the SID mechanism was first called into and SIDs for that special improvement district was first discussed almost 2 years ago we had a provision in our code that referenced language from the Title 31 Special Improvement District statute that didn't really make sense. And so some of the owners that were trying to get utilities up to and past Roberts Road and on the hill had started asking the town about that. And we looked into that and determined that we weren't going to use our code section to create the district because it wasn't complete. What we discovered then is that we had kind of copied a section out of the Title 31, CRS 3125501, which is the authority of the town to create a special improvement district for infrastructure, which includes the project that we have in front of us tonight and very recently, the 8th and Bluff Special Improvement District. The way that those work is that we determined that we were going to create a special assessment on the owners of that district so that the town could benefit from the cost allocation of extending utilities, but without having to dip into general fund and or put the financial burden on just the community as taxpayers. And so we looked deeper into the SID funding mechanism and just how that works. And in April, the board directed staff to draft the ordinance, and then by June, we were on our way to having created the SID. We were on our way to sending out to the electors, which were the owners in this case, the 10 owners who were affected by the SID, to adopt and accept assessments up to a certain amount. And so we, as far as SID goes, just so everyone's aware, it's also a self-liquidating structure, meaning that when the assessments are paid off, that district goes away. Did I hear somebody interjecting for a question?
No.
Just
Okay.
me coughing.
Oh, all right, Bevan. Well, don't interrupt me like that, man. So briefly the process, and it was that, we got petitioned. We had our public hearings. We set up the assessment. We determined who was going to be in the SID and in what percentages based on the number of lots that they have within the developable area. We then sent out for election. It passed, and the assessment or the SID was formed, and then the assessments were accepted by the owners. And then we went about the business of sending out bids after we brought in our town engineers to engineer the utilities, a plan for the utilities to get them up to the special improvement district area. So I guess as part of the process, I would just say, as we get into just general liability of the town, the default of a assessment owner or property owner within the SID will be taken care of through a non-judicial foreclosure, meaning if they don't pay, it's treated just like people who don't pay their taxes. So we're considered a super lien. We are even above, in this case, we'll be ahead of any mortgages as well. And so whoever builds on their property, we will be a super lien, and we'll be able to foreclose through a non-judicial process, which is, the least onerous process there is for foreclosure. It's just, again, it's the same that we use. It's the same exact language as what's used in tax lien foreclosure. Our liability as a municipality is that the SID is us. And so unlike metropolitan and other type of districts that are formed through, that might be formed through, different structure, we basically issue bonds to an investor, in this case, the bank, and then the investor pays for the project. And then if an owner defaults, then the town would, go after the property itself as the leverage on that financing. But it's not a claim generally. The bank isn't gonna. It's not a claim generally against the town, because of the way that the bondholders remedy it goes through. Like I said, it goes through that lien foreclosure, and so the town it's not completely insulated. But it is somewhat insulated from, direct obligation. We would never have to pay this debt out of our general funds, because that's, the lender would not be coming after the town directly. And if we did owe anything on the bonds, then again we would sell property to pay off the debt on the bonds. So one of the issues that came up is just like, well, who's generally liable during the construction of a project under an SID? That's not really specific to the SID. That really just goes back into general tort and negligence liability, which again, the town, it is, the SID is the town's, but whether or not there's some defective issue or latent defect in the construction, it would be the same analysis as, say, like a defective sidewalk causing an injury. If it was obvious, like a sidewalk that's non-leveled and somebody trips, generally a town's not responsible for that because it's obvious. It should be obvious to the reasonable person that that's a tripping hazard, and they would have to take reasonable precautions to avoid it. So anyway, SCGIA still applies, which from torts, we would have to create a dangerous condition. And again, that in the public street, sidewalk, or public building that wasn't obvious and couldn't reasonably be avoided, and or was a latent dangerous condition for the town to have liability in that capacity. And I mean, again, that exposure exists whether or not the improvement was being funded by an SID or not. So we deal with that every day in the general operation of the town. One of the issues the board needs to be aware of, especially in context of what we're going to be asking of you tonight in the regular meeting, is procedural due process type liability. And I'm sure the board has heard this, from every angle, but the bottom line is that we have to follow our own processes. And so when we adopted the SID or formed the SID, we became, we now have to follow the statutory guidelines and follow the process for administering and working under that SID on this project for 8th and Bluff. And so an example of that would be, we have to properly give notice and execute the correct ordinances and resolutions pursuant to the statute. I will say that the statute is not incredibly clear. It is it's kind of out of order. It's not really a strict timeline. It's more organic than anything. And, it's a little bit hard to follow. But that said, there are certain requirements that, whether clear or not, have to be met. And sometimes those requirements, aren't clear until you get kind of past a certain place in the process and then realize that, okay, the next step is this, and it refers back to a previous step, but with different parameters. And so that's why you're going to see that emergency ordinance, the assessment ordinance, before you guys again tonight, because we're trying to fix a due process error. We had originally passed the emergency ordinance unanimously, and the public hearing thereafter that was scheduled didn't occur because at the time we did not believe it needed to occur. But our bond counsels pointed out that we should have had that public hearing whether or not there was opposition by the owners or not. And that, again, that came out of some language later in the statute that wasn't immediately apparent at the time. So that's why you're going to see that emergency ordinance. And I'm just using that as an example of, due process liability. If we weren't to go back and fix that now and then have the public hearing, somebody could challenge It would typically be an owner, but and then they show no interest in challenging it, but we still have to go back and make sure that we have followed the process correctly. And so that's those are really the three types of liability that the town is exposed to: the general financial liability of the project, the possibility, although very small, of some sort of dangerous condition occurring because of the project, and us not appropriately identifying it, and then procedural due process type liability in the actual administration of the SID creation, and then the timeline and requirements of getting that SID from start to project completion. I say to kind of wrap that all up, the bottom line in all of this is that the SIDs are very, very common. They're used because it pushes the risk, most of the risk in the financial obligations, onto the owners within that district, which is why we have the elections so that they can vote to accept that liability. And then that's why they also given the chance after an assessment to challenge and or appeal the assessment. In this case, that hasn't happened, but we're going to have to go through another 21-day waiting process if we pass the emergency ordinance tonight. That was cleaning up the previous emergency ordinance. But anyway, so the financing is pushed onto them, and then the town is not exposed under its general fund, and it also doesn't burden the general taxpayer for putting in utilities that are only that they don't benefit from. So that's kind of like a large macro level overview of the SID, why we use SIDs, how we got here, and what we're trying to do going forward. And I'm going to pause here and just answer any questions you may have.
Blake, did you see the email from, I'm sorry, the first name, but Miss Campuzano today?
I did say that again. Am I aware of?
From, the last name's Campuzano.
Yes, I've read that email, and I've also spoken with Ms. Campuzano's attorney.
Okay, can you maybe summarize or what your thoughts are on that? And
the more or less the complaint is that the way I look at it anyway is I'm looking at it in view of liability in the project. The complaint isn't more the project itself than it is the development of the SID developmental area, I guess we can call it, because the main issue with the complaint is runoff from the hill where those houses would be developed. My initial thoughts on it are that first of all, our engineers approved the plans for the utility. The utility itself is it's just a trench with sewer and water lines that isn't going to dramatically affect any runoff area. The major issue I think that's brought up in that particular complaint or projected complaint is the development of the hill, and where those houses theoretically will be built will take away from the natural area and soaking up runoff. I mean, I don't know why or how they would come to that conclusion. I don't have any. I mean, I'm not an engineer, so I don't know that. What I will say is that that whole area is zoned for development and residential. We've already been through kind of the wetland discussion. We've already been through, the building, who can build and where. And the bottom line is that area is it's not protected area. And they're privately owned lots that are already zoned for residential. So as long as, that fight with runoff and or, water displacement would be more relevant if someone were to say, I'm building a house and I'm also going to put in, I'm going to put my entire yard's going to be concrete. That would be then go through our planning commission and building permitting, and they would have to, explain why they're not meeting the required, snow removal area and or snow removal or snow storage requirements that are already existing in our code for the reasons that was brought up in that, that complaint. And so, I mean, I understand, the general idea of it, but I also just don't think it's relevant to this particular project. And so far that we're not approving and or we're not approving the development, and we haven't even seen a plan for a single residential home. But all that to say, yeah, I know people like it and it's a big green space right now, but I would just caution the board to keep in mind that that's private property. And it's zoned residential. And if somebody wants to build a house, there's not much we can do as long as they build it within, if it's permitted and built within our building regulations.
Is there any validity to the comment in the email about the timeline and the data that they got from the geotech as well as the depth? Or does that need to run back through engineers to ensure that information is still valid?
Well, I mean, some of the geotech stuff, again, I'm not an engineer, but from what I understand is geotech was done at the development site and not along the entire area of the utility. I don't typically, and I don't know if geotech is done along an entire utility route before it's dug. I've never heard of that. I've never seen it. I've been involved with private and public and private-public partnership utility construction, and typically they just dig the trench and put the lines in. It's not, they're not taking geotech samples every 6 feet along a, hundreds to thousands of feet of utility line. It just doesn't make sense economically. That's why you build in extra costs for if you hit rock or if you come across some sort of obstacle that's unseen. But I mean, I understand that has been thrown around a lot, and I'm not an engineer, but I've also seen these projects quite a few times, and I've never heard of, geotech along an entire utility route before it's dug. It just doesn't pencil out. It would cost more to do that than it would to dig the hole. That's what the way I view it. From a liability standpoint, that's the liabilities on the engineers who approve the design, and then of course the contractor who has to dig the hole for the price that they said they would.
Somebody, I guess, ask John for a comment.
Yeah, certainly if you have questions.
Kind of like to hear John's perspective on that. Again, not being an engineer, not being involved in this before. I guess my question is, if John raises an issue, do we need to have the engineers say, this was done 3 years ago, it's still okay? Do we need to have geotech on the area that's being developed, from the town up to the property? Just, it sounds like we're getting some speculation on the engineering side in terms of what I'm asking questions for here. And I'd hate to jump into it and have all of a sudden, there is a timeline on data. So I don't know.
Yeah, so the question of, if I believe in the Campuzano email referenced geotech from 2021, so 5 years old at this point, if there's any sort of precedent for, especially for something like geotech, like, does the data have to be from within 2 years, or is it perfectly acceptable to utilize data that's, a handful of years old?
John, do you know any regulations around this? Is it even required, I guess? Or is it just a good idea?
In the construction world, all it's a better idea to know what's underneath you. And being 5 years, conditions change. So if geotech was done, say, let's just make an example tomorrow, I very highly doubt that they were the same 5 years ago. But I also did follow up on one of the geotech questions a couple of weeks ago. And the geotech that was done was all on private property. It wasn't anything within the right of way. And that's yes, it's going to be affected on private property. And they've done their due diligence to do a geotech, but there's no numbers or anything in the right of way. So that's why a couple of meetings ago, I suggested geotech be done. 5 years is a long time in one aspect. In 100-year time frame, it's not. But conditions do change within the ground. I mean, and until you do geotech, we don't know the answers. So does that kind of?
Yeah, it does. One, it sounds like it's not regulated that it has to be done prior to moving forward, which almost maybe negate the idea of it's 5 years old. Doesn't need to be done by regulation. First, it sounds like it's not. If it's a really good idea, it's a really good idea. And so I'm just thinking if something went wrong and it was a regulation and we weren't following that and their attorney nailed that and said, okay, something went wrong, you guys follow the regulation here. That's a different story than you guys just didn't, do what you thought was right, if you know what I'm saying.
I would have to go back and get a hold of SMG and because they're the engineering firm.
Yeah.
They know the regulations better than me. And ask them if there is a timeline on that and what their recommendation would be to the town, because I would follow that recommendation.
I would like some sort of input from engineers before we go forward.
There's also an area where there hasn't been any activity, it's not like there's building adjacent to the site. Like, it's on a hillside that's pretty steep and drained. That's coming from a total layperson perspective, but.
I'm an engineer before I got into medicine. And you don't start a project, you don't invest until you get the engineer, professional engineer, PE. Just like an attorney signs off on something, until the PE signs off and now's the date it's ready to move forward. Because no one knows who isn't involved in that, enough to make a decision that could be, I guess, supported as an expert witness in a case.
Haven't multiple engineering firms already kind of viewed this and feel good about moving forward with it?
Well, that's what I'm just asking at the time.
These are professional civil engineers that haven't indicated to us the need for more geotechnical analysis.
Engineering sign off has occurred, but we can, and this should be a simple question, we can ask SGM just to make sure that, I'm assuming, right, since we had the sign off, they wouldn't indicate this, but just to double check that there's no expiration date.
Yeah, there's no statutory requirement for geotech in a utility setting like this, unless there's some previously, if there's been shifting soils or some sort of, what do they call it? If that area is known to be if there's caves or, previous and, incidents, the areas where geotech is required is typically, they like to see a soil analysis on foundations, especially in areas where there are cairns and other geotechnical features where you're digging into or going into bedrock. Often they'll ask for soil, and typically if you're going to be doing on-site wastewater versus utilities, so if somebody had to set up a leach field, for example, because they couldn't get sewer, then you would have also I know a geotech and soil analysis type. Soil analysis is required in those instances. But for what we're doing, there's no statute that I've come across and that requires a geotech analysis at all. And so there would be no statute of limitations on the geotech that's been previously completed. But again, I think it's not a bad idea to go and check with SGM, who approved the plans. Just so the board is aware, there's no statute that says you must do geotech before laying utility. Those requirements are typically with engineered sewer systems that are on site.
Thank you.
I've got a question for you, John.
Oh,
Has the contractor even been up here to see what the area looks like that he's?
Apparently he was up here one time months ago. I don't know if he's been back.
But he has.
I know I haven't had any contact with him.
He has no idea what's under the ground once he starts digging then.
Not as far as I know.
Thank you.
Yeah, and staff have purposely held off on, making that contact with Animus Excavation and talking about timeline and mobilization until an agreement contingent upon financing is in place. Don't want to put the cart before the horse.
Do we get references from them, by the way?
Yes.
Lindsay, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
Chris? You have any questions?
No, we have already voted to move forward with this, correct?
Correct.
Okay.
I've got a question for Clayton.
Yes, sir.
Just before you go to the timeline of 8th Street Bluff SID, it says here, the bottom line, the SIDs are utilized because they push financing risk into benefited property owners rather than the municipal's general credit and or taxpayers. But that insulation isn't absolute. So we could still be held liable?
Well, it's not absolute in that. I think you pointed out, Doctor, in the past that, there's worst case scenario situations where the town is, no project, no transaction, no construction is risk free. And I think anybody who tells you that would just be lying to you because they wanted the project to go forward. There's always going to be some inherent risk when you're dealing with large projects of any type of construction, just because of the amount of money that has to go into the initial part of the process. And so, at the outset, we're financing this project through assessments that are leveraged by property. And so the bond council and staff and the bank have if this goes through, the financing gets approved, they will have gone through and done a risk analysis and determined that that there is risk, but that it does not overcome the project's capacity to leverage that risk. And so that statement is in line with your assessment, which is there are worst case scenarios here where the town could possibly be open to some liability. One of the ways that the bank is trying to overcome that, and one of the things that's going to happen is they're going to take a reserve fund from the prepayments on the debt, so that if an owner walks away or there's some catastrophe and a lot is not developed and or somebody's not paying that assessment and we're between owners on the property, that they have a reserve so that the town does not have to pay that assessment. And so just as an example, that's a way to mitigate something like that. But again, there's no absolute way to mitigate the risk.
I should say I was remiss earlier stating that Dalton Kelly from Butler Snow, our bond counsel, is with us this evening. And it's like Dalton has his hand up.
Good evening. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Good evening.
Excellent. Well, Dalton Kelly with Butler Snow, we are serving as bond counsel to the town in connection with the SID bonds. We also were your bond counsel on your USDA loan. And I just wanted to add hopefully some points of clarification to the question about any liability. The only thing pledged to pay these bonds is the special assessment revenues. So there's no pledge of your general fund revenue. There's no pledge of any other revenues of the town. And the bank does not have any legal right to make the town come out of pocket with any other funds. All that the town's required to do is collect the special assessments and pay them to the bank. As Clay mentioned in the past or earlier in this meeting, the bonds are issued by the town because the SID is the town. So it is a town obligation, but it is solely payable from that special assessment. You'll have a covenant that makes you go try to collect those special assessments and foreclose. And so long as you're taking those actions to collect the special assessment, you shouldn't be in default. You're doing everything that you should be doing under those documents. And that's why the bank wants, as Clay mentioned, this kind of reserve fund with any prepayments so that they have a little bit of buffer if you're between owners and collections aren't being collected. You know, as Clay kind of alluded to, at the end of the day, there might be some feeling of moral obligation from the town to try to pay this off if something's not being paid because you're the issuer here. But I did want to be very clear that financially, the only piece that is pledged is the special assessments. The city is not financially liable for these bonds. The only responsibility of the town is to impose the special assessments and collect the special assessments and then to remit that revenue to the bank. But none of your other funds are pledged. You're not required to come out of pocket a dime other than giving those special assessments.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Dalton.
Clarify that has a lot of clarity.
This for both Dalton and Clay, perhaps. We're in conversations with the bank as we're trying to think about timeline. Perhaps this would be a ballpark, but if you had to estimate, how far out would we be from, having final terms to present to the board and everything, everything is signed with the bank?
Well,
I don't know if Dalton knows that specifically. I've spoken with Kim, who is the attorney assigned to this, I believe. And I know Dalton's working on it as well. And we're estimating that, we're not going to get to a closing and fund issue until roughly the time where we're meeting back up to actually adopt the authorizing ordinance, which would be August 24th, I believe. So we're looking at over like a month before, if once approved, actually being financed for the project. And Dalton, if you have any other information, that's right now it's just projection. But if you had more specific information, I'd welcome it.
Yeah, Clay, I mean, ultimately the earliest we can't close on a financing until the bond ordinance is adopted and the assessments are put in place. That's August 24th. So even assuming those were done by emergency, the earliest you could close is August 25th. Some of this comes down to terms with the bank and documenting it. And so I would say my more conservative estimate is probably a close in September, given that I think we're targeting the 24th for those ordinances. And so I would say late September, early October is when funds would be in hand, just given that we have some additional ordinances that need to come before the board, and then closing documents would need to be put together, terms negotiated. And so that'd be my ballpark on where we are right now.
Okay, thank you. That's very helpful.
So we need to go talk to NMS Excavation to see if they're even willing to extend that far or potentially start next spring or whatnot. And that way we can keep this thing moving in the right direction. Because otherwise I worry about like a rebid and all that being a kind of like a deal killer, so.
So if we don't start until next spring, is all the bonds information going to carry over till then?
So, there's a question between when you issue and close and when you would start construction. I think the question would be, if you can't start until next spring, do you want to close on your bonds sooner rather than later? The assessment will get collected and start getting paid in January, so it still is probably in the interest to get the bonds closed and to start collecting the assessment so it can get paid off and you have funds in hand so you can get started. But ultimately, that would be the driver. I mean, at the end of the day, the issue with closing on a financing that accrues interest is until you start collecting the repayment source, you're just accruing interest on funds that aren't spent. You are allowed under the federal tax rules to invest those proceeds and earn some interest yourself during a temporary period. And so, kind of a long way of saying, it's not an issue to close now, though you could always decide that depending on the bank's flexibility, they would probably have to refresh their terms, but you could also push the financing for a few months if you were thinking it made more sense to close in the spring. This is getting a little ahead of ourselves, but the ordinance that would be adopted or considered on August 24th, the delegation is good for a year. And so you're not necessarily boxed in to a tight timeline on when the financing has to close. And so I think there can be discretion and ultimately usually delegated to the town administrator and whoever's overseeing finance to help make those decisions if you're going to delegate it. And so you do have some flexibility, but my suggestion would be to lay the groundwork for the financing on the current timeline so that there would be the ability to close if weather's cooperating and get the construction started sooner rather than later.
Thank you.
How does everyone feel?
I feel much better. On now.
That was great clarification.
Ron?
And it was very helpful to know that we, if construction is spring, that we have options for either going ahead and closing now or waiting. Seems like there's the pros and cons to both, so we can sort through that. Yeah.
John, so the bond issue seems to be clarified. And if this gets pushed to the spring, what are your thoughts in general on preparing for that time? Is there additional work or outlay that has to take place?
Well, I think as far as if it gets pushed till spring, that would be a lot better than trying to start this year and then shutting down and continuing next year. Sewer's not a big as issue because your pipe is carrying core sewer. Your water is a bit more concerning because you have to seal that sucker off so nothing gets in there during the winter time, because if something does, then that affects your back T results, and you may have to chlorinate and flush that numerous times to get that out of there. So much preferable to not start and stop and then restart. It's more preferable once you start, then you go. There's no stopping, because then you're controlling that contamination and what that might possibly do to those pipes and everything else. And even ground conditions change from spring to fall.
Okay.
So yeah, so perhaps if the agreement with Animas, once again contingent upon financing being in place, is approved this evening, then right, it'd be the time for John to make those connections with Mike at Animas Excavation and have that, perhaps site visit and outlining schedule. And then at that point, we can make that really informed decision if this is feasible to pull off this year. Or if construction needs to wait until spring.
Can I add something to that?
Mm-hmm.
So right now, because like Elizabeth said earlier, I have not had any communication with Animas because timelines and everything. But I don't know even if he's picked up other jobs between point A and point B where we're at today. So even if we gave the green light, there's no guarantee that he's just sitting there twiddling his thumbs waiting for this to happen. He's got to keep his business, his crews going. So and contractors, they will keep busy. So you have to get on that schedule. But at this point, we haven't even talked because there really isn't a schedule.
Yeah, but again, based on direction this evening, we can get that started.
Yeah, we can get started.
Yeah, and make that determination again if it's,
Yeah,
realistic.
what does the feasibility look like at September 1 or mid-September? And I think I can assume the answer to that, but then in that case, would they be comfortable outlining, the start date with this bid for in the spring, that we are able to, lock in the financing to show them that everything's ready, now or in the not too distant future. Because I don't see a big reason to pause the closing of the financing, because I just think it like no one ever makes the first move to get the thing going, and I didn't hear a whole lot of cons on starting the financing now. So yeah, maybe once they see that we're serious and we have the financing, we're ready to go, then he can get it on his books for the spring, and he can, honor that bid and, be excited to have that work ready to go. Scheduled.
Is it necessary to have close on the financing prior to taking assessments in January?
Yes.
Yeah.
For sure.
Right.
Well, it sounds like we have some pretty solid next steps identified to keep this rolling along. And those will be right up in our regular meeting. Here if we're ready to wrap our work session up. But any last questions for Dalton or Clay or staff?
Right. Good. Ask it now.
I'd kind of like to see us close a little bit later than now. Maybe just close just before the assessment would be due at the first of the year.
Yeah, I think what we could do is, here's a thought. If the notice of assessment is approved this evening, and we'd still have that public hearing on August 24th, just to make sure we're following those correct procedures. And then perhaps, I believe it would be the let me just bring up my calendar, August 10th meeting, the next regular meeting. What we could do is bring together, a summary of the options for closing now or closing later, perhaps closer to the time of assessments, and just present all of the information related to those two options, and have the board make a decision about or provide direction for moving forward with those final ordinances.
That's good.
And we would learn a lot from Animus by then too,
Yes.
likely.
Yeah.
Cool. This one's probably not easy to answer, but if there's any concept of what would trigger the attorney from Campuzano that put a halt on anything? Is that something that could play out here?
I'd have to defer to the attorneys. Yeah.
I mean, there's nothing we can do about. My guess is if somebody wanted to stop it, I'm not going to attribute an argument to another attorney, but there's nothing we can do from somebody attempting to stop the project or to otherwise divert the project through a lawsuit. But I don't know what that cause of action would be, other than if we messed up our own process or if we violated some requirement or statute, which thus far, we haven't seen that's the case. I mean, the one thing that we didn't have was that public hearing on that first assessment ordinance, but we're rectifying that. And so, we're allowed to fix our own processes. And even if we were to be sued and stopped, and we can remedy anything by fixing it. Obviously we have to follow engineering and regulatory guidelines, but we've done that. And so I don't know what a prevailing cause of action would be, but that doesn't mean that a lawsuits can't happen. Someone might have, they might file a lawsuit that is ultimately unsuccessful, but that doesn't mean that we can prevent them from filing it.
Do you think there's any way they could stop work without having an obvious, reason that where we're stuck with the close on the bond and we're sitting without getting any work done?
I mean, that's something that is very unlikely. Again, unless there was some smoking gun that we're not aware of. But again, that's something that I'd rather discuss in an executive session for a legal advice, because I don't want to attribute any argument to anyone who's thinking of threatening or even contemplating suing the town. I don't want to throw out information that could be used against the town. And so I'd rather discuss the more particular matters of possible lawsuits and injunctions and things like that in an executive session, if you'd like to do that.
Fantastic. Thank you, Clayton. Thank you, Dalton.
Yes, Mr. Mayor.
I think we're up to speed. I think we're feeling good now. Okay, I conclude this work session. It is 5:56 p.m. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll reconvene for our main meeting. Good.
I'm gonna step out.
We recording? All righty. Good evening, everyone, and welcome. For those of you who'd like to stand for the Pledge of Allegiance, please do so now. Pledge of Allegiance.
One nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice.
All right, good evening, everyone. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Silverton Board of Trustees. It's July 27th. The time is 6:06 PM and I call this meeting to order. Derek, roll call, please.
Okay, trustee Humer, out here, trustee Brosh. Here. Trustee Brown. Here. Trustee Halverson.
Here.
Trustee Wakefield.
Here.
Mayor Pro Tem Schnecker.
Here.
And Mayor Harper.
Here. Perfect. Do we have any board or staff revisions to the agenda this evening?
No revisions.
We do not. Fantastic. Yeah. We had a very spirited work session. Perfect. Moving on to public comment. Please, just as a reminder, 3-minute public comment for those in person and for those out there in TV land. Do we have any public comment? Fantastic. Seeing no public comment here in person and or.
In person?
Yes.
Oh, okay.
Oh, perfect. Okay. Sir, welcome. Say your name for the record.
Folks, thanks again for having all these discussions. My name is Jeff Diener. I'm the Silverton SID landowner representative. I hope your SID work session was productive and many or all of your questions have been answered at this point. Hopefully all the attorneys could address those details. I know there's been some persistent questions on certain details of the process, financial backstops, et cetera. And I tried to address some of those in the email I sent you this weekend. So hopefully everyone got a chance to look at that. I only wanted to ask that you all please stay focused on the big picture here of this opportunity, of your master plan goals, and the fact that the SID state statutes, they're all built specifically for this purpose to enable and to safely protect the town in this process. So, you know, we ask you to continue to take the necessary steps forward and get this to the finish line because we're real close. So I'll be here if anyone has questions for me, but I'm sure you've had plenty of attorney time. So thanks.
Thank you, Joe. Anyone else in person who would like public comment? Fantastic. Online, anybody? Not seeing anyone, going once, going twice. All right, we're going to close public comment and move on to item number 4, our consent agenda. Elizabeth, do we have any highlights for tonight's consent agenda?
Not this time. It's extremely straightforward.
Perfect. All righty. I'd entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda.
So moved.
Second.
Terrific. First and second, roll call, please.
Okay, trustee Brosh.
Here, yes.
Trustee Brown.
Yes.
Trustee Halverson.
Yes.
Trustee Wakefield.
Yes.
Pro Tem Schnecker.
Yes.
Mayor Harper.
Yes.
Okay.
Wonderful. Moving on to item number 5, we have staff reports.
Yeah, just a few quick things for me to highlight. So appreciate all the feedback on the housing director interview schedule. We're zeroing in on August 6th. And so I'll go ahead and get a calendar date set for August 6th. And we've been doing outreach for participation on the community panel and have been getting some good feedback. So again, we'll have the hiring committee and community panel as well. And the other quick thing to highlight is we received direction from the FPR committee to engage with Air Vipa about discussions about Campbell Mountain and Silverton Alpine Marathon, just to discuss timing and look at ways to align those events in a way that better serves our community. So we're going to be moving forward with some of those conversations with Arabipa.
Anybody else?
I'll go.
Yes, please.
It's not in the packet, but I figured I'd address a little bit on, we're getting rain. Great. Good, starting to green up. We're continuing to monitor what our flows are coming in. They haven't improved a whole lot, if any. So I know staff has been getting some phone calls about, oh, it's raining, take off the water restrictions. No, not at this point. It's still very up and down. And so we're getting, yes, we are getting some rain, but it's not really getting to what we need it to be, where I'm comfortable with lifting the restrictions. So I just kind of wanted to, I'm sure you guys are feeling questions too, that, hey, how come we still have them? There's still a reason for it. So, and you're more than welcome to contact me and we can discuss it in length. So.
Thanks.
Thank you. Wonderful. All right, we're moving on to 6, presentations and proclamations. We have a presentation, actually a program update from Southwest Colorado Air.
Yes. So this evening we have Emil Elias with Eco Impact Solutions joining us, and they'll be giving an update on the Southwest Colorado air quality project.
Wonderful.
Okay, hi everyone. Can you hear me?
You can. Welcome.
Excellent. Yeah, thanks. So hi, my name's Emily Elias. I am the founder of Eco Impact Solutions, and we are an environmental consulting company in Durango. And I'm going to see if I can share my screen. And one of the things that I'm working on is managing the Southwest Colorado Air Quality Project. So are you able to see my screen now, my slides?
Yes.
We are.
Excellent. Okay, great. So I just really want to acknowledge first Becky Joyce and Amy Gardner, our local project partners. They're helping with the community checkout program with the purple air monitors that I'll talk about in a minute, and have just been really helpful in bringing Silverton into the project. So I just want to thank them and acknowledge them before we start. And so this project is a 3-year EPA-funded air quality project. And so it covers Archuleta County, La Plata County, and San Juan County. And has basically 3 objectives. The first objective being to increase air quality monitoring in the 3 counties. The second objective being to increase public awareness and knowledge about air quality, and also about protective behaviors that people can take when air quality happens to be poor. And then the third piece is to provide accessible data and information related to air quality to the people in this Tri-County region. This isn't in the packet, but I realized I needed to explain why air quality matters. So in the middle of the 20th century was when we really realized that air quality could be a big problem. And this was related to the 1952 London smog event, where around 4,000 people died related to that. And that really spurred the 1955 Air Pollution Control Act, and then the Clean Air Act after that. And so since then, fortunately, there's been quite a lot of improvement across the nation related to air quality. But there are a few challenges that still remain. One of those challenges is ground level ozone. And CDPHE found elevated levels of ground level ozone and did a bit of a report in parts of this region. And then particulate matter. And particulate matter is generally associated with dust storms, also associated with catastrophic wildfires. So those are the challenges that still remain and the focus of this project. So in terms of particulate matter, I just wanted to show you what it is, the size. So you can see this tube here, that's the size of a human hair, that's 50 to 70 microns in diameter. And so the particulate matter that we normally measure is 2.5 microns in diameter. So really small. It can make it a long way into the lung. And so that's really what we're measuring with the purple air sensors. And I just wanted to give you the context of what particulate matter looks like in terms of size. And then in terms of ozone, what is it? Ozone is not directly emitted. It is a secondary source. So it's formed by precursor emissions and sunlight as a catalyst. And typically the impacts relate to, of course, breathing. You can see here asthma medication related to ozone, and you can see they both increase directly. There's a correlation. And then there's also a picture here of vascular damage to plants. So this happens to be aspen. And if you see these brown spots ever when you're out and about, then that is related to ozone. And then the last additional slide is just the different levels of air quality monitoring. So we have kind of low cost sensors, and those would be the purple air sensors that I mentioned that are part of our project. We have 23 purple air sensors, and those are part of our community checkout program. So people can borrow these sensors. You need to have Wi-Fi and electricity. You can borrow them for a few weeks, or if no one's waiting, you can borrow them for longer. And so those are we've had 15 of those checked out so far. So we're really appreciative of that. We also have 5 mid-level air quality sensors, and ours happen to be the QuantiQ modular sensors. One of those was just installed near the Silverton school, so I can talk about that in a minute. And then the higher level regulatory monitoring, that's not part of our project. That's something that CDPHE would handle, or there are a few monitors or systems at the Southern Ute Indian tribe, but we really don't have a lot of regulatory monitoring in this region. And so, those are really the highest level sensors, and that's not part of what we're working on. So one thing I wanted to mention to you is the air quality index, and this really links measured air quality with risk levels. And so you can go to airnow.gov right now and type in Silverton. I tried it myself before I came here because there are places where it doesn't work, but you actually can pull up this kind of color code. So if the color happens to be green, you can go outside. There's no restrictions and no risk. But if it happens to be purple or maroon, then people might be affected by the air quality, especially if they're doing outdoor activities. And I mentioned the air quality index partially because the purple air sensors that we have actually glow the color of the air quality index. And you can see that in the picture at the bottom left of the slide. So you can go to map.purpleair.com and see all of the purple air sensors. If you happen to check out or be part of our program, then you can see the sensor that's in your own backyard as well. So this is a way for people to learn more about air quality by actually having hands-on participation. And if you're interested, then you can just sign up. You can follow the QR code and sign up, and Becky and Amy will reach out to you and schedule a time for you to come get the sensor. If you have any troubles, they'll come, help you, or I can come up and help you to install it. So that's one component of the project. And as I mentioned, we also have the QuantiQ modular sensors. We have 5 of those sensors, and they are all now finally installed. We installed the Silverton sensor last week, so I'm really happy about that. And one is in Pagosa Springs at the middle school, one's in Bayfield at the library, 2 are in Durango, one's up at Fort Lewis, and one's at the library. Part of the reason for that is that we wanted to look at the difference in topography in air quality, and I don't know if we'll keep the one at Fort Lewis if there doesn't seem to be much difference. And so I don't know if you've noticed the sensor or not, but it really is smaller than a toaster. It's this gray metal box. All of the magic happens inside, and we're measuring particulate matter, different sizes of particulate matter, nitric oxide, nitrogen dioxide, carbon monoxide, and the ground level ozone. And all of these data are available on the swcoair.org website. That's our website. Or they will be available. We have to update the new sensors, but they'll be available tomorrow. So if you're interested, I invite you to go there, and you can, see how these values are being measured where you are. Oh, one other thing. So right now, this is set up with a solar panel. It would be better if it were connected to electricity. It's fine for the summer, but as the temperatures get cold, the panel might not work as well into the winter. So it'd be great if we could set it up. And I guess I was told that there's electricity there where we can plug it in, which would be great before the winter, sometime in the fall. I think everybody probably knows about the Watch Duty app, where you can see wildfires in your area. It's a great app, but you might not know that they also have a wind direction component. So if you're interested in seeing the wildfires in the area, but also if you can expect the smoke to come your way, that's a nice feature of the Watch Duty app. And I use it a lot, and it's helpful when we're thinking about air quality and being protective. So I just want to invite you again to reach out to Becky and Amy to be part of the community checkout program. We do have email updates, not very often, a couple times a year, maybe more, maybe 4 times a year, but not more than that, that will provide some data summaries and also any sort of upcoming events. I invite you to join any of our webinars. We'll be having one in October. We'll be happy to come out and give a talk or presentation that's a little bit more in depth than what this is, if anyone's interested. We have a presence on LinkedIn and Facebook if you'd like to follow us there. And if you'd like to reach out to me, I invite you to just email me directly. It's emily@ecoimpactsolutions.org. I'd be happy to talk with you. And then probably Becky and Amy, but I put their email addresses there as well. So thanks so much for allowing me to come and speak with you. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you so much for coming out tonight and providing us with an update. Do we have any questions or comments? We love all the work that you're doing. Thank you for keeping us safe.
Thank you. I'm happy. Reach out anytime. Happy to come up and provide any information that might be helpful.
Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Alrighty. Business item 7A. Resolution 2026-16, a resolution of the Town of Silverton approving case number 26-11. VAR 1142 Green Street. You're up.
Great. This is a public hearing to review case number 2611, a variance to allow upward expansion of the existing building while maintaining the non-conforming 0-foot setback at 1142 Green Street within the MU1 downtown zoning mixed-use zoning district. Variance applications are reviewed and decided on by the Board of Trustees acting as the Board of Adjustments. So if everyone can just put on their Board of Adjustments cap for this one. An action is recorded by resolution outlining the conditions of the variance granted. Before I jump into the staff report, do you guys have any questions about that?
I do not, but I have only one.
Yeah.
Anyone?
I forgot my hat, but okay. Okay, perfect. All right, the project location is 1142 Green Street within the MU1 zoning district and the historic district overlay. The applicants are Shay Coburn of the Urban Rural Continuum and Jonathan Sylvester on behalf of Bonanza Boy LLC. And all required documents were submitted on June 22nd. So as you can see from the visual, the project proposes to vertically enlarge the building to create a full second floor and rooftop deck. This includes vertically enlarging the current non-conforming rear portion of the building, which protrudes 5 feet into the required 5-foot setback, meaning that the building is built on the rear or alley lot line. The applicants would like to maintain the current footprint and enlarge upward, as seen in yellow. So that is the what we'll be discussing today. The purpose for this public hearing is to review the request to deviate from Silverton Municipal Section 15950, which states that nonconformities may not be enlarged or altered in any way that increases its nonconformity, except for in certain circumstances which do not apply to this application. And like I said, variances are reviewed by the Board of Trustees acting as the Board of Adjustments. So 1142 Green Street, that building is also known as the Old Livery Building or the Livery. This building was constructed in 1897 and was used as livery stable and later as a garage, retail, and residential uses. The structure is historically significant. It is considered a contributing property to the Silverton National Historic Landmark District and is eligible for local, state, and federal historic registry designation. And as was common during this era, the structure was built to take up the entire lot, making the legal nonconformity historic. Also, as a note, a concurrent historic district overlay review application has been submitted and is tentatively scheduled to be reviewed by the Historic Preservation Committee in August. And that application can be reviewed on the town's website under the Community Development tab if you click on pending applications. The applicant is proposing an adaptive reuse project with an emphasis on historic preservation, economic development, and affordable housing, all directly aligned and informed by the 2022 Compass Master Plan goals. The proposed uses include retail fronting Green Street, 3 hotel rooms, and 6 units of affordable housing restricted at 100% average median income or AMI, as well as a rooftop deck. The renovations are ADA compliant and they follow the Secretary of the Interior standards. For anyone who's unfamiliar, those are the national standards for historic preservation. The town recognizes and requires that exterior renovations of historic buildings meet those standards for rehabilitation at a minimum. And these standards are also required for projects receiving state or federal historic preservation tax credits, which this project is seeking. And lastly, housing units will be deed restricted. Before we jump into the review criteria, here's the request and the visual one more time. The building currently has a 0-foot setback, which is historic and legally non-conforming. And the applicants are requesting an upward expansion to create a full second floor, including the non-conforming section shown in yellow. The applicant's responses to the review criteria are included in their application and staff's full analysis is included in the staff report, and we'll go through that review criteria now. Firstly, exceptional conditions exist. The Livery is a historically significant building and is considered a contributing property to the Silverton National Historic Landmark District. So the town does have an interest in preserving this building in accordance to the Secretary of the Interior standards in order to maintain our landmark designation. 2, strict compliance creates extraordinary hardship to meet the requirements of the land use code. In this case, strict compliance would require the building to be recessed 5 feet in the rear, which could impact the historic character of the building, threatening the project's ability to meet the Secretary of the Interior standards and Silverton Municipal Code Section 15280A9. And this could also threaten the project's ability to meet requirements for tax credits. 3, the code's intent is preserved. Rear setbacks are primarily intended for utility access, snow management, and vehicular traffic through alleyways. The Livery Building has maintained a 0-foot rear setback for over 100 years now, so there's little concern about that continuing. The primary concern with an upward expansion of a nonconformity would be snow maintenance. However, a snow maintenance plan was submitted. The snow shed from the roof will be managed by the building staff Rear entrances will be covered and maintained for safety, and a portion of the rear wall will be recessed to cover and protect the building's meters. The applicants have noted that they intend to follow Public Works protocol for scheduling snow removal in the alley, which is right now the standard practice for other Green Street buildings with 0-foot setbacks. And upon review, Public Works noted this is actually a better snow management plan than the current, which right now the roof will shed unpredictably. And lastly, Public Works, Building and Planning have reviewed the proposal and determined that maintaining the 0-foot setback and allowing upward expansion will not interfere with public safety or welfare. Besides our internal review, we did not receive any referral agency comments. And staff is recommending approval of the application as presented. Again, variances are recorded by resolution. So tonight your options are to approve resolution 2026-16, approve with conditions, deny stating your reasoning and applicable code sections, or table the review to a future date certain. Here are the sample motions. The full sample motions for all 4 options are included in your packet, and I'm happy to put this screen back up if you need it. But if there's no quick initial questions for me, I'll hand it back over to the board to invite the applicants to speak. And we have applicants online and in the audience, and then move to open public comment, and then move into board discussion where you can ask me or the applicants any additional questions.
Thank you, Lucy. The applicant like to come up and say a word? You state your name for the record.
Jonathan Sylvester, project manager for this. Excellent. Nothing to add content wise, but just convey love and gratitude to you all for serving in the town. It's a joy to work in this town as you protect the history and also about the future. Same thing we're trying to do with the building, protect its historic nature, but also make it super fun for the future and useful for the inhabitants. That's it. Thanks.
I've got some questions if I can.
Oh, let's go.
What's the height of the building gonna be?
Get that answer to you. You know it, it's written somewhere.
Okay.
Front or the back?
Tim Stroh, architect.
So Tim Stroh, architect for Springboard Studio, one of the architects here. And Shay, if you're online and you got those dimensions sitting in front of you, I can tell you that the elevator tower will be just about under the 40-foot line. I don't know who answered that, asked that question, but yeah, that's the tallest part.
It'll be under 40 feet?
It'll be under 40.
Under 40. Okay.
That's the top of the elevators. The roof deck
of the
is in the low 30s.
So the roof deck is actually staying below the parapet that you see out there.
Okay. It says you're gonna have the refuse will be off-site. Where are you guys gonna put the trash?
Operational. I don't know that, and I'll
Okay. How about a sprinkler system? Will that have a sprinkler?
be sprinkled.
Okay. And what is a community rooftop deck?
We have a picture of it. The community rooftop deck is right now it's a slope building. We want it to be flat for the full 2 stories. Since it will be flat, we want to take advantage of that flat and have events, local artists, birthday parties, wedding receptions.
Last question I have for you is where's the parking going to be?
Parking is, because it's on Green Street, it's allowed to use on-street parking. But because we know and we expect more guests, we have since purchased the Silverton Square building to use it for supplemental parking.
Okay, thank you.
And the garbage will have a
magically disappear.
I'll ask what the other folks do on Green Street and we'll do the same.
Okay.
Yeah.
Anybody else?
Those are interesting questions, Rob.
Very good.
I have one question for Lucy. Will we maintain our historic designation by the work they're going to do?
What was that?
Will we maintain our historic designation with the building with the work that they're going to do?
It is not my place to give you a definitive yes or no. But I do not, in my review of the application, I do not see any work being done that would threaten it. And in fact, I would say that they're enhancing it and they're doing everything in line with the Secretary of the Interior standards. So, but I can't say a definitive yes or no to that.
I can help with that. So the historical designation really is more of a restriction. Once this building is designated as historical, it has to go through a more restrictive process than just a normal building. And so it's not typically, it's up to the town to decide to approve that project. And it would, and as long as it's done by our code and by state regulation, then the historical designation won't be affected. You'd have to do some pretty major exterior work and or replacement under state law to do that. And because it is historically designated, you know, the town reviews these applications in that light, and that our approval more or less ensures that the historical designation will stay. Just as a kind of a way to look at that.
Mainly the front of the building and the facade that people are more concerned about than the interiors and the rooftop, correct?
So I can maybe enhance that a little bit if that's okay. So the facade of the building is actually going to follow the Secretary of Interior standards for rehabilitation. And so all the windows that are there will be rehabilitated. They're not being replaced. We'll enhance those with interior storm windows to get the R values. The stone facade that sort of slumps on the right side, we're actually going to be unstacking that masonry and restacking it. So it'll all be straightened up and it'll look brand new. So really the facade's going to go back to what it was originally. And it's still called rehabilitation. We're not calling it preservation. There's different standards in the Secretary of Interior standards work. It's rehabilitation that allows us to do things like swing doors different ways to meet building codes, or use things like interior storm windows. But, you know, we're going back with the correct mortar composition, rebuilding and replacing stones where they're cracked or they need to be replaced. The parapet, there's some signage items that need to be recreated that are missing. So it's going to look pretty cool when it's done.
We're really excited about making it even more historic. And we have the old black and white photos, Bev Rich said, here we go, Tim.
Yeah, and to the gentleman that was online, we are in the process right now of working with the state SHPO on the state tax credits, historic tax credits, and then we'll move on to the National Park Service for the federal historic tax credits. And so we still have to go through those processes, and anything that we would do that would impact the designation wouldn't be allowed. We couldn't do it. So we're going to be going through a few hoops on this one. It's going to be cool, but it'll be a process.
Thank you.
I already have a better answer about the garbage. I'm sure it'll be a combination of storing internally in the mechanical rooms and storage rooms inside, and then staging it, whether down to Silverton Square or another offsite lot we'll rent. We're leasing the lot to the left of it now for staging. We will buy or lease or arrange dumpster.
Thank you. I did see a hand up online. Did that individual want to speak or?
Yeah, this is
Or that was Shay?
Coburn. Yeah, can you guys hear me okay?
We can. Thank you for joining us.
Awesome. Hey, thanks for having me. Thank you to our Board of Adjustment, our trustees and mayor and staff. Thank you for getting us, working with us through this project. I think I just wanted to highlight a couple more items on the criteria for approval of a variance that I think were really helpful for me when thinking through this. There are a couple kind of complicating features with this particular building that are explained in the staff report. The roof line of the current building slopes down to 1 story in the back. So there's this really funky middle section of the building that has 2 stories that are misaligned from the front 2 stories. And that's due to that historic use of the building. So that's another hardship that we're facing with this property, trying to make it a really viable use, trying to make the building fully accessible. And we're having to kind of work with that. So that being kind of another extraordinary hardship that we're facing. And then I think just really feeling like we're revitalizing this building quite a bit, bringing it back to a practical use and really balancing some, I don't know what I would call proper preservation efforts with all of the other goals in the Compass Master Plan of encouraging housing affordability, preserving history, and all of that. And a side note that I think I had mentioned in the applications, that the owners here had applied for the community revitalization tax credit through the Office of Economic and Development Trade, and they received almost $1 million in tax credits, and they're among some big players like Colorado Public Radio and the Telluride Film Festival. So really exciting to be bringing those funds and tax credits into the community. An exciting announcement to share with you guys. But generally, just wanted to be sure to share that there are some other reasons why we're feeling like we meet that criteria in the criteria required for approval of a variance. And just thank you for taking the time and consideration on this one.
Thank you. Any additional comments from the board? We have staff recommendations from Lucy, John. Would anyone like to make a motion?
We have to open up for public comment.
I apologize.
We have to open up for public comment. Public comment.
What about it? We just did it.
No, we just did questions with the,
Oh,
then we have to do the official.
would anyone like to jump in for public comment? I have hearing aids now too. And glasses. Anyone? Perfect. All right, closing public comment. Now, I will ask the question once again. Would anyone like to make a motion?
I move to approve resolution 2026-16. A resolution of the town of Silverton approving case number 26-11. VAR 1142 Green Street, requesting a dimensional standard variance to allow the partial reconstruction and enlargement of an existing structure while maintaining its existing non-conforming rear setback at 1142 Green Street within the MU1 downtown mixed-use zoning district.
Second.
Perfect. We have a first and a second. Call please.
Trustee Brosh,
Yes.
Trustee Brown.
Yeah.
Trustee Halverson,
Yes.
Trustee Wakefield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schnickler,
Yes.
Mayor Harper.
Yes. Motion passes. Perfect.
Thank you.
I know.
Thank you, Stuart.
Thank you. All right, 7B, we have a public hearing, emergency ordinance number 2026-04. Ordering publication and mailing of notice of assessment to the owners of the properties to be assessed for improvements in the town of Silverton, 8th and Bluff Special Improvement District. Clayton, I'm gonna kick this over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As I alluded to in the work session, this is an emergency ordinance that was already passed unanimously by the BOT. This is the notice of assessment. We have done this once, and in the initial adoption of this ordinance, we never followed through in the public hearing because as an oversight of staff, we did not believe it was necessary due to the fact that we had no complaints or objections pursuant to that particular section of statute, which was 31-25-5034. However, bond counsel pointed out a different interpretation and probably a better interpretation of a later language in the statute that requires a public hearing to memorialize the passage of the assessment ordinance without complaint or objection by the owners. And so we are here to re-adopt this and go through the proper waiting period, which will put the public hearing for this assessment ordinance on August 24th of 2026. I think the board is pretty well versed at this point on what the assessment is, what it is not, and pending your questions, I don't want to talk on and on about it if I don't know where the issues may be with the individual trustees or with the board as a whole. And so I'll pause there and answer any questions you may have regarding the assessment ordinance.
So we have to, do we have to actually have a public hearing right now? Is that what we're doing?
No,
Okay.
sorry. This is we have to re-notice the owners. Even we did it right. We did notice them. We received no complaints or objection, but we never held the public hearing to memorialize that there were no complaints or objections and for this to basically take effect. This is part of that due process liability issue that we discussed in the work session. But suffice to say, this is kind of administrative error that we are fixing in the process for the SID to this point. It is not in any way approving that, or it's not an authorizing ordinance. It's not anything other than something that we did, I believe, back in March, but we just never followed up on the public hearing that we were supposed to have. And so we need to renotice because the time for objection and complaint had passed, and we've taken follow-on steps. And so this is we're going to create another opportunity for the owners to submit complaints and or file any objections to the assessments that we are imposing.
Oh, okay.
Right, so this is ordering the publication of the thing.
The assessments and the next.
Yeah, that's correct. Where we have to republish and then wait the allotted time period and then hold the public hearing, which we currently have planned on the 24th of August.
I move to pass emergency ordinance 2026-04.
Second.
First and a second.
Okay, trustee Brosh.
Yes.
Trustee Brown.
Yes.
Trustee Halverson.
Yes.
Trustee Wakefield.
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schnicker.
Yes.
And Mayor Harper.
Yes. And that takes us to C, which is the Animus excavation agreement for services. Hey.
Thank you. This is me again, Mr. Mayor.
This is you. I asked earlier.
So I did try to create a kind of a status update in the agenda memo. I won't rehash that. The part of what we needed was obviously this assessment to clean that up. What you have before you is the agreement with Animus Excavating LLC. This would be the actual agreement that's in place that incorporates all the plan sets, the RFP, and all supplemental scope of services, including the Diner Bluff Roads, Robert Snowden and Diner plan sets that all consolidated make up the approved project plans for the 8th and Bluff Special Improvement District project. This particular version contains all the necessary requirements for completing that transaction. It also encapsulates the obligations of the owners to all financial obligations above and beyond the previously approved amount of that roughly $1.311 million cap that the board put on the project pursuant to negotiations with Animus Excavating, that number being $1,311,370, which is the maximum town payment amount under the town compensation cap paragraph in paragraph 7. It also was drafted by me and staff, and we would recommend, if you wish to go forward with the project, to pass this contingent on the final passage of the final passage of the authorizing ordinance, and also final approval of financing terms and conditions, which will be included in the authorizing ordinance. And so, as you're aware, this agreement will not, it will be passed, but it will be passing contingent on those two pieces falling into place, which will happen, if it does happen, would happen on August 24th, 2026 at the regular meeting. Subject to your questions.
So can we still make changes to the project before we do this? Or after we do this?
Well, yeah, this isn't a project plan change. This is just the agreement with Animas. So we would have to change this agreement because the final project approval that from the engineers is incorporated into this document. It's possible to change elements of the project or scope of services, but it would require an amendment to this agreement.
Just looking at it, with the Capistranos being involved and the 8th Street project, to me, it would appear it'd make more sense to come in through 10th Street. Avoid the 8th Street, fill all the dirt work that needs to be done there. Come in that direction and make the roads proper width, make the turnaround the proper size. That way we don't have issues like we do down in the flats. We have a housing development down there. The roads are a mess down there. Actually, they've got alleys that we've turned into roads. If you look at the Anvil project, those roads are not in great shape, and we've accepted all of that. I think when we do this, we should do this project right. Otherwise, it's going to be in a mess, just like the other projects we have in town. Thank you, Rob.
And that's a possibility that would require, a completely adopted plan set and engineered plan.
So money.
Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Better spend your money up front than in the rear end on it and have twice the problems.
Yeah, again, I have no expertise in this at all. I just would defer to, John and Ron and so forth for their opinion on, is this the right plan from that perspective? Is there a better option? If there's a window where we may be buying time, days and talked about earlier, and getting this off the ground this year versus the spring, there's a room for discussion on, is this the exact right plan? John, what do you think?
I think there's an opportunity, yes. Or we can stay with what's presented. But what Ron brought up, that's definitely an option. That would, I'm not an engineer, but you'd only have to carry your water and sewer down to Pompazano's. You'd eliminate that road on that corner and all that expense putting in that turn there. So in one respect, it would be cheaper and it would totally get away from the Campazano. And that might, with an engineer, he might be able better to calc that, and that might alleviate any potential drainage because you're going back with dirt. You're not going back with anything hard, going back with native. So that's definitely an option that I could look into with SGM. Basically you're dumbing down a project, but in a good way.
Why this may not have been the initial approach?
No, because I was into this.
That was Rob's road, right? That was the one that approved.
John Sites.
Yeah, a while ago. That kicked off. The approval of that road kicked off the wetlands discussion. So that was like 2021, right? Or wait, no.
22.
22.
I just jump in and say that, trying to rework the whole plan is gonna create very big issues with the feasibility of the plan itself. And we have something that's been worked on in detail with engineering firms. And it just seems like at this point and also based on those details, we have already voted to move forward with those details. So I guess I'm at a loss as to where we're trying to rethink this whole project and even our ability to do that.
Yeah, and to just a quick note for your discussion is these plans have already all been approved. These were approved multiple times individually, and then they were approved for the RFP that was put out for the 8th and Bluff Special Improvement District. So we're not talking about approving the actual plans. That's already been done. This is just a discussion on the agreement with the contractor who is a successful bidder for our RFP, if that helps kind of so you understand what the discussion really should be. The plan sets have already been approved by the board.
Clayton, I appreciate that because we're going to be discussing and voting on this one specific topic, narrowing it down to just this and nothing else. Then the peripherals, that stuff stays on the side. So we're just discussing the agreement with Animus Excavating LLC.
And refresh my memory, we only had 2 people that bid on this and one of the bids was incomplete. Is that correct?
Had the 2 bids, we did a request for amended bids, and received 2 complete bids, at the end.
So we did get 2 complete bids.
We did, yes.
And then we've checked references on Animus Excavation.
Yes, John called
Yeah,
references.
I called, there's 3 listed. I called all 3. 2 of them were acceptable. The third one, in my professional opinion, wasn't.
John, you've obviously read over this agreement. Any comments or issues you see here?
I worked with Clayton on some of the stuff. My biggest addition was LDs to make sure that the town is covered on that. Pretty standard boilerplate contract, which there's nothing wrong with that. But I mean, it meets the nuts and bolts.
And going back to our conversation we were having in the work session, if this approval is given for this event this evening, right, that gives John the green light to start engaging with Animus Excavation and having those discussions about mobilization and timeline. Since we heard from the bond council that realistically, you might not be looking to get closing documents in place with the bank until late September. This gives John the opportunity to see if I can figure out what are we realistically looking at for being able to pull off this fall.
As well as their appetite to enter into contract with a future date of spring if needed.
Yeah.
Our previous recommended motion, we do have staff recommendations on this to approve. I see the nodding of a head.
Yeah, I mean, it's nuts and bolts of a contract, and the one thing I did want to say, if I may, when I start conversations with Animus and everything, and if it gets prolonged till next spring, the one thing that I want to make everybody aware of here is typically you will see a 5 to 10% increase on construction materials. So that is, you can plan on it. And 10% this coming year might be on the
Low end.
low end of things. So that we will find out from Animas whether their appetite with the amount of money that is potentially there, if they can even do it. Because that's gonna be, you know, yeah, 10% is gonna be light. I think this coming year, we're gonna see some bigger increases. But that's all stuff that I can talk to Animas about.
Wouldn't lead
And this
with
is,
increases, but
What's that?
I wouldn't lead with, hey, are there any increases?
and this is contingent on a few things here too. I mean, just so the board is aware, you still have to accept the financing terms and conditions to start work, and we still have to pass the authorizing ordinance. This is just the contract. This is just the agreement with the company. If the board were to pass this, there would be some things that would need to be changed in the timeline. For example, the completion date and then the substantial completion date and timeline that's embedded in this contract would need amending, and we would have to do that, at the time that we pass the authorizing ordinance, and that would be largely dependent on Mrs. Sarkis's negotiations with the contractor. And so I think somebody said it best. This is the enabling. This is the contract with the excavator to enable moving forward. It doesn't guarantee the project's going to happen, and it does not allow like a start work date. We still have to wait on a couple of pretty major pieces to fall into place. And those pieces hopefully will be brought to the board by the 24th meeting. And maybe at that point, the timeline will have to be moved to the right a little bit, at which time we'd also ask for the timeline amendments to the contract itself.
So this is the checking of one of many boxes. Okay.
Yes.
Have a recommended motion in your packet.
Do you have one more question?
Okay.
One more comment, actually. I know we were handed this as a new member, board member. And I know this isn't what we're voting on. It has nothing to do with whether this is the right design. I just don't know when the right, is there a better, less expensive option? That clicks 2 boxes. Is that window already passed entirely? I hate to think that, if there's a better option, it's cheaper, that can't possibly be discussed again. And let alone with the potential lawsuit sitting right in front of us with the current approach that we're taking this path towards, if it can all be avoided, I just don't know when the right time is to discuss that. So I'm just putting that out there.
Could be my misunderstanding, but I think that ship has sailed and we've approved these plans.
That is correct. And we also then expose ourselves to this other legal risk by basically, preventing construction of plans that have been approved.
Can we not make amendments to it?
I mean, I think we wouldn't because there's 2 parallel things. There's the plans that are approved, and then there's also the SID, which is the funding mechanism to build it. So I think that's maybe where some of the confusion comes from.
Like Dr. Brown says, it might be a cheaper option.
Right.
Again, just stepping aside is, fiduciary responsibility to the town. I want to see this go forward. I think it's in the best interest of the town to go forward. However, it just seems like if, we have some expert opinion that says there's a better option, and we simply can't listen to that because.
What's the expert opinion?
Public Works Director.
I didn't hear him say that there is a better option. He said that was an option. Is that correct?
Well, yes, but I would need direction to say, explore this option. And I think if I was given that direction, it wouldn't be an expensive option to look at as far as cost to the town. If I was to engage SGM, because I know exactly what I would change. You eliminate with this one section, which would say, if you were looking at it at 100% design, you're changing 25% of it. You're changing one section of roadway. You're eliminating that. You're eliminating that cost. That is for an engineer on AutoCAD, takes him 30 minutes. So it's not a drawn out process to possibly look at another option.
I think on the trajectory that we're on though, this pursuing, looking at a different road, plan is getting us off this current trajectory where we're going to be taking, multiple steps. Maybe taking steps back might be the right term, but we are we'd be abandoning this current route. And
the reason that came up is because of the new attorney involved with crumple zones. I wouldn't have said anything if that wasn't sitting there in front of us.
Go ahead.
No,
I would
think
I'd be
risks are always going to be
careful.
present, like.
Go ahead.
Oh, I just say, I understand that the caution. And again, without getting into too much of what I would rather discuss in an executive session regarding, legal advice or possible lawsuits. I mean, there's no way that there's the possibility of lawsuits from any in any option. I just want to reiterate to the board that these are already approved plans. There is a way to amend it possibly. I don't know if there's a way to amend it without scrapping the whole thing and starting over. It depends on how substantial any amendment would be to the plan, and if that would technically be a different project, and we'd have to reassess the entire project and submit another RFP and do reassessments, et cetera. There's a bunch of people, owners and staff, particularly there's private interests in this outside of the staff and the board that have already received approval to move forward with their plans. And that could also open up the town to lawsuits. Also, if we move the road or move the plan, and again, I'm not an engineer, there could be another owner, just as an example, that would have the same complaint as the current person threatening complaint and lawsuit. And so I don't think there's any way to do this that doesn't include the threat or possibility of a lawsuit. And I caution any town to be careful changing and deviating from previously approved plans and projects just because of the threat of litigation, because we would never get anything done. There's always someone who doesn't like what's happening, and not saying that that's what's happening in that case, but there's no guarantee that changing or amending a plan is going to mitigate the possibility of a lawsuit. And so I just don't think that's a good factor in determining whether or not you want to change something that's already been approved, because then we will definitely be creating other causes of action against the town as well. And so it's not great news, but it's just the reality of doing something like this. And in any event, approving this agreement, again, is not approval of the plans. The plans have been approved. And this agreement is contingent on final approval. And that will be the final decision, is once the authorizing ordinance is issued and we close on financing, that's when we close the project. This is not closure on this particular project. And so insofar that the board wanted to discuss an off-ramp, I don't know if this agreement is that trigger. I don't think it is. I think the off-ramp would need to be discussed in another agenda item, wherein you're withdrawing approval of previously accepted plans and going back with some sort of amended plan, with a lot more input from the people that stand to be most harmed by that decision, which would be the SID itself, which is the board and the owners that are affected by any amendment to that plan. So just as a caution, I don't think the threat of a lawsuit is something we should be factoring in, at least at this juncture.
Thank you, Clayton. We do have a recommended motion for agreement.
I move we enter into the agreement with Animus Excavating LLC contingent on the board's final approval of financing terms and conditions in the authorizing ordinance.
Second. We have a first and a second.
Timothy Brown,
Yes.
trustee Brown,
Yes.
trustee Halverson,
Yes.
trustee Wakefield,
Yes.
Mayor Pro Tem Schnicker,
Yes.
and Mayor Harper.
Yes. Motion passes. Thank you. 8, discussion and direction items. Do you have anything you'd like to discuss?
I would be,
Haven't already covered.
I would be curious, Clay has brought up the possibility of an executive session to discuss potential legal matters pertaining to the SID. Just want to see if that's something there's interest in and would like to prioritize.
Is there something specific no, just in general?
Yeah, discussing the Campuzano matter and what that might mean for the town and the project.
I feel very comfortable with my understanding of our legal liability around the entire project. And I don't need that, but that's just me.
I too feel comfortable. We've been threatened past 6 years. I've been sued for the past 6 years by various people. Wouldn't be the first time. It certainly won't be the last. But if the board, just me, if the board wants to have an executive session on this topic, that's fine. But I for one feel that this is just part of our job. Is to take the arrows because it is what it is.
We're not ignoring concerns. We're saying these are real concerns that we're hearing, and we know that we're also going through the process as prescribed, and we're dotting our i's and we're crossing our t's.
I'd say similarly, wait on an executive session until something actually comes, if it does.
Okay.
Ron?
See what happens.
Okay. Doc, feeling good?
I'm okay with that.
Great.
Okay, we'll wait.
All right, moving on to 9, committee reports. 9A is utility committee. Show and tell.
It was show and tell. Are you leading, Jim?
No, go for it.
Well, we did have a bit of a show and tell. It's fun. Well, I think, okay, so I'm looking at the agenda now. We talked about how well the grant, the CPW grant is working over the transfer station, and that we're collecting fees. So that's good.
Yep.
We also did talk about, oh man, what was this? Oh, some shift in schedule about on-call duty just to accommodate a better work-life balance for those in public works. And then, of course, our fun show and tell item was talking about a fire hydrant permit, which those in the utility committee all agreed that this was a really innovative solution to help collect revenue in places where we have been losing it. I don't know if you want to speak. Will that come before the full board again? You want to?
Yes, it
Yeah.
will. I could even bring back the meter, so.
I got quizzed, so I just feel like it is right for everyone else to get quizzed. I'd say, but essentially, we're actually going to be charging for use of our fire hydrants, for contracted services, not for the fire department. And that's super clear. That was our utility committee meeting.
Wonderful, thank you.
Can you expand on the utility services?
Expand on the utility services as far as the hydrant.
Thing of hydrants, yeah.
So basically what I presented to them was I purchased a 3-inch meter that adapts down to a fire hydrant. So if a contractor comes into town and we can use the repository, say they couldn't draw water from the stream. Then I could hook this hydrant meter to the hydrant at Bear. And they draw water through that, but instead of losing the revenue, we would charge per gallon. And because that water is still at the end of the day worth something. And so, but like Lindsay said, we wouldn't be charging the fire department because that's emergency. But it's for all those little things where instead of giving them free water, we would now be charging for it.
There's two. So
So if one's out, I've got a spare.
Thank you. You want to move on to library board?
Yeah, topic of the library board meeting, is progress that's being made on the ADA access project. So there's an American Library Association grant that's providing funding to put in an ADA parking spot and walkway. We are working toward getting a survey complete, and there'll probably here in the near future be an agreement coming before the board, because part of that parking pad is going to be on school property. So we'll get an agreement in place with the school. They're very much for it. So progress is being made there. Misty's organizing food drive and school supply drive here in the near future. So that's coming up. And Misty's also gearing back up for another season of the library podcast. And so if any, especially for town elected officials, if you have any interest in being on that podcast or suggestions to Misty for topics, she'd love to engage with you.
Great. The library is also, was it Saturday night? Friday night? Hosting Back to the Future,
yeah.
40th anniversary, super cool. Putting a shout out there. Anyone likes it as much as I do? See, Finance Committee.
I'll give it a shot.
Yeah, go for it.
I was out of the meeting, mostly in for remote. The general seems to be no major red flags. I think the major talking points were we're behind the sales tax, but there's a 2-month lag on that. So we won't be really realizing that till later in the year. And that's about all we can say about that. Okay, we're on target. And I think the major issue was, and we may have talked about this already in the group here, utility collections and how we're going to go about trying to sum that up or shore it up and come up with a policy to collect back utilities and have a standard going forward, hopefully plan by early 2027, maybe not January, but first quarter or so. So we have a policy that we follow going forward. I think that was major points. Miss Ann and Jim? No, good. Yeah.
Chris?
Good.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, D, Planning Commission. You gonna take us on a field trip?
I think it's your turn.
It is my turn, and I brought my notes. How about that? Here we go. We all met at 6 p.m. at the courthouse. 5:30 or
5:30, so close.
so close. San Juan Regional Planning Commission and the Board of County Commissioners will meet to, we met to go down. We went down to Cascade Meadows and walked. We did a site visit and walked to the new site for the 72 units that are going to be phase 1, phase 2 in our South County right there on the border. Doesn't really affect town per se. The good thing about this, and Lindsay, jump in, is that affordable housing benefit.
But the county, like another subdivision we've already gone through, requires a 10% fee in lieu or development of affordable housing. So that is an opportunity for some alternative funding for the housing authority and affordable housing outside of what we can provide. That there's still in discussion about what that will actually be. So I don't have any thoughts on how to fundraise money for affordable housing. Welcome at the county.
All right. San Juan Development Association.
Yeah, so SJDA is working through their updates to their contract with the senior center for providing fiscal management for the senior center. The ribbon cutting for the new entry signs is going to be August 26th, and everyone here is invited. Should be a good time. One thing Sarah's working on in conjunction with John is working with CDOT to get a permit for putting in a pullout by the sign. We're getting a lot of folks just, pulling off the road with little signaling, just stopping in the middle of the road to take pictures of the sign. It's become quite an attraction. So working through that. Another big point of discussion was talking through, long-term, specifically Green Street construction projects. Delivery was the example. So a project that's going to be ongoing for multiple years. How do we best communicate with businesses and community members about updates and having a conversation about the best way to, mitigate, access issues and how we can, beautify work sites during construction. So definitely some good brainstorming, and we'll continue to probably utilize the town's newsletter just to provide more consistent construction updates. So businesses, again, know what to plan for.
Questions? Wonderful. All right. Well, that takes us to open discussion, future agenda items. Do we think we already touched on that?
I got one.
Oh.
Yeah, so I've thought about this and it was brought to my attention by a citizen. And this will show my ignorance, but I just wanted to learn a little bit about how we keep up our sidewalks and our parking. And like one example that was brought to my attention that I definitely agree seeing this happen is like at Harmony Park at 12th and Green Street. That sidewalk kind of, especially during rain and everything, it gets covered up and is just kind of in bad shape anyways. And I think a lot of people will park kind of on the sidewalk. And I just didn't know what the process is like to, address that, or I don't know if we can, what we can do to, what the process is like to address something like that.
You're referring to the 12th Street side of the.
Yeah, the south side of that, where if you're on Green, you turn left, that left sidewalk, and I see, just say general sidewalk maintenance. I don't know much about, but that one specifically does get kind of parked over quite a bit and kind of isn't. It's often not very accessible to bring the sidewalk from Ree Street to Green Street on that south side, up against, I guess, the school garden and the Harmony Park.
You should probably get on that owner's ass. So maybe a letter written directly from her.
I think fines would be good too.
Well, let's not get excessive.
Sorry, you said excessive fines?
Yeah, exactly.
Get right on it.
Short answer, sidewalks are a responsibility of the property owner and directly in front of their residence or property or wherever. Directly discussing Harmony Park, both those sides, that corner is responsible. The responsibility is the property owner.
I got you.
But on that theme, I was thinking, John, maybe what we could do here at a future meeting is just provide an update on the Blair Street project, especially for our newer trustees. An example of where we're able to leverage some local grant match and get a sizable grant to address sidewalks.
Gotcha.
All right.
That clarity.
Okay, I guess we're perfect. We'll open it up to public comment. And seeing no one in person, is there anyone online that would like to comment before we go? And please note that we're going to go into executive session after a short recess, or do we want to go directly? Let's recess. All right, seeing no public comment in person or online, I conclude this meeting at 7:25, 7:26 PM. We'll take a 5-minute recess and then we'll come back for an executive session. Thank you. Send me another summons?
No, no.
Still.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. Welcome back. Why am I placing the page? Today is July 27th, 2026. It is now 7:33 PM. The Town of Silverton Board of Trustees will motion to go into executive session. I would entertain a motion. Enter executive session. Wonderful.
Second.
I have to read this whole thing now. It is July 27th, 2026, and the time is 7:33 PM. For the record, I am the presiding officer, Mayor Jim Harper. As required by the open meetings law, this executive session is being electronically recorded and will be kept for 90 days. Also present at this executive session are the following persons: Bevan, Ron, myself, Coral, Chris, Doc, Lindsay, John, Elizabeth, Derek. We got Clayton and Judge Anthony Edwards. Perfect. This is an executive session pursuant to CRS 24-6-402-4B. Conferences with an attorney for the public entity for the purpose of receiving legal advice on negotiations with the BLM on the R and PP land transfer. I caution each participant to confine all discussions to the stated purpose of the executive session, and that no formal action may occur in executive session. If at any point in the executive session, any participant believes that the discussion is going outside the proper scope of the executive session, please interrupt the discussion to make an objection. Are we now in executive session?
We need ones.